This is going to be a semi-structured and open-ended interview. Questions, and I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. And my name is Liz Ayisi, and I would like to really know your experiences as you have passed through high school to college, especially in your mathematics education. So at any time of the interview, if you don't feel like you want to continue this anymore, please feel free and just let me know. What year are you in college?
I graduated college
Okay.
in
What year did you graduate?
2020.
Okay. Did you transfer? So let's go back to the phase when you were in high school and then you were transferring to college, like when you graduated, that phase when you graduated to from high school and then entered college. I want to just know about your mathematics education throughout your college education. So in high school, did you transfer some credits from high school to college?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you participate in advanced placements, college credit plus, or honors courses?
I participated in courses, but not AP in the mathematics section.
Okay, so you did honors, you said? No.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of honors did you do?
I did honors calculus. Up to honors calculus.
Okay.
And
So you did algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, and then honors calculus.
yeah.
Okay. Can you help me understand what your high school was like?
My high school was pretty average high school. I transferred from a high school down in Georgia up here in the 10th grade. And so then I began my math curriculum. It wasn't too difficult. The worst that I had it was in my pre-calculus class, and that was like I struggled quite a bit with my homework. But after I was able to get some help from a tutor, calculus was not too bad.
Okay. So let's talk about your school, your high school in general. Like, how big was it?
It was pretty big. We had a graduating class of about 300 people. So it was a decent sized high school.
Okay. Is the 300 like about what you graduate every year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So there were about 1,200 students in the school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Was your high school well funded?
It was decently funded. Some years we'd have really good funding, and then others we wouldn't. The first 2 years that I was there, we had really good funding, and then they started cutting funds in some areas.
What areas were they cutting funds?
Usually it was the arts department and language and those departments.
Okay. So help me understand. You started your high school journey in Georgia, and then you transferred to Ohio?
Yes.
So you did 2 years in Georgia, 2 years in Ohio.
So I did 1 year in Georgia and then 3 years here.
Okay.
Because I semester my sophomore year.
Okay. Were both schools public schools?
Yes.
And what kind of or what sort of curriculum did your high school have?
Could you elaborate on that question?
So in Ohio, the requirement for high school diploma is like 3 years of math, 4 years of English, I believe, 3 years of science. So those are curriculum for a student to fulfill before they can, and on top of that, they have to take the Ohio tests to graduate. So I'm just curious what your high school curriculum was like.
So we did have the Ohio graduation tests. We also had, I believe it was you had to have at least up to geometry or algebra 2 in order to graduate from high school. And so it wasn't the most strict and rigorous curriculum, but also it wasn't it wasn't exactly lenient.
Okay. What kind of math curriculum did your school have?
So everybody usually starts out in algebra, and then we start moving forward. Some people come in and already are in geometry because of their test scores and what they've done previously. And so those people usually end up taking calculus and then taking AP Calc later on in their senior years to get college credit. But that was pretty much how our math curriculum was.
Okay. So you had AP Calculus AB in your high school and AP Calculus BC in your high school?
Yeah.
What about AP Calculus, AP Statistics? Did you have that as well?
Nobody really took AP Stats in my school.
Okay. Was this something that was offered?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Can you tell me about your experiences being in a tract system as a Black student?
So I wouldn't say like predominantly white school per se, but a majority of the students were white. But there were I would say it was like maybe a 40-30 mix of white and Black people. And so, like, it wasn't exactly difficult trying to get somebody to help me, like, if I needed mentoring through the system or anything like that. And so I would say I've had a pretty good experience through it. But many others would say quite the opposite of what I'm saying, because I know some people like who just didn't like some of the math classes that were offered, some of the teachers just in general, like teaching some of the subjects. And so it all really depends on the mentorship that you had.
Okay. And you believe you had a good mentorship? This is in high school?
Pretty. Yeah.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
So I had very good relationships with most of my high school students. And so if I was struggling in something, they usually pull me aside after class and ask what's going on. And if, like, it was me maybe struggling, like, understanding, like, the assignment or just not getting the homework done on time or things like that, they usually were pretty lenient. Like, I could come in during my lunchtime or my study halls, come get the help I needed and get the work so that I could understand what was going on and stay on track to graduate.
Okay. And these mentors were your classmates or older classmates?
These were my teachers.
Okay. All right. What did you major in college?
I majored in chemical engineering.
Can you share with me what led you to this interest or this area and why you chose to be a STEM major?
So coming out of college, I always knew I was going to be a STEM major. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do because I had always wanted to like do research and help, like, in a way to either produce medication, cure diseases, things like that. So, like, pharmaceutical sciences was, like, something I've been really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I had decided to go to OU, and OU did not offer that option. And so I initially went into college with a degree in biology. And after speaking with some of my advisors in the college's biological sciences, I was referred to the engineering department to see if they had, like, a program that would fit my interests. And they mentioned the graduate biomedical engineering program, which seemed like exactly what I wanted to do. And so after speaking with them, we figured out that the chemical engineering path would be the best way, because I would get, like, the math skills needed to be able to do that graduate program, instead of going the biological sciences route where I wouldn't have those same skills. And so going through my freshman year, I took the biological sciences classes, the general eds, and then my sophomore year, I went ahead and switched over.
So going back into when you decided that this is what you wanted to do, right? What led you to that interest before that?
So I suffer from a chronic disease, and so because of that, I have, like, always been interested in, like, finding cures for diseases. Like, I've spent, like, hours looking up cures for, like, just random chronic diseases I've run into. And so, like, just something like that interests me and is, like, basically a hobby. Like, I would like to use that to help other people, you know, even if it's, like, just something, like, small, like, maybe helping during research, like, writing the research paper, helping in the lab, doing something, like, that's really what drew me to this.
Okay. Are you hoping to continue your education?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Nice. So tell me about yourself as a mathematics student.
Math has always come pretty easy to me. I've been blessed with having really good math professors, like, all through high school and college. And so, like, my freshman year was probably, like, my lowest math grade, which was, like, a B. And then my sophomore year, junior years, I always had, like, an A. Differential equations, calculus 1, 2, like, all those classes were really, really easy for me. And so I'd say I'm a pretty good math student.
Okay. What was your first math class in college?
It was pre-calculus.
Okay. And you took pre-calculus in high school and then repeated it in college as well? Okay. So would you say is mathematics part of your identity as a student or as a learner?
Yes.
Why so?
Yes. Because everything I do literally comes with that. Like, everything. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like the calculating part. Like, just trying to figure out the math has, like, a process to it. Like, no matter how you solve it, like, you have a process to it now. The process may be different, but there's always a process. And so, like, you always, like, I've always just applied that same I guess, doctrine to my life, where, like, if you want to do something, like, there's a process to it. And so, like, you have to go from A to B, B to C, C to D, like that.
All right. Do you like to contribute in your mathematics class? Why or why not?
So In my Calc 1 class, that was probably like the only class I didn't really raise my hand in.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was a lot going on that year. And so I just, like, I was always tired. I was always with a headache. I was always lost. And so I just didn't really participate in class. But, like, pre-calc, calculus 2, all those other classes coming later, I would always participate.
Why do you like to participate?
Participating, like, gives you, like, the track that you're on is correct. Like, if it gives you, like, the engagement that you need. Like, you can sit there and teach you the process and come back the next day and say you understand it. But if you can't give an answer to a question that's being asked, like, right now, then, like, you don't really understand it.
Okay. Help me understand how you perceive your learning of mathematics.
So, like I said, like, to me, math is a process.
Okay.
Like, it's like building a Lego car. Like, you have the instructions, there they are. Just follow them, and you'll get where you need to go.
What opportunities were you introduced to in high school?
In regards to what?
Anything you thought it was an opportunity to you whilst you were in high school?
Well, I found out that I was good at pottery in high school, but that was really about it. To me, high school was go to school, do your work, come home, do your homework, sleep, do whatever you need to do at home, and then go back to school. So, like, I wasn't really involved in any extracurricular activities, and so that may have prevented me from finding out about those extra opportunities.
Okay. Were there activities set aside after school that you were interested in?
So my senior year, actually, I joined the science club.
Mm.
That's really, like, where I picked up, like, my love of being, like, in a lab from. Because, like, we would always do, like, different kinds of experiments, and I would always think, like, those were some of the coolest things, like, I'd ever seen. And so, like, that's really where I picked up my love of, like, organic chemistry and things like that. And so that's why, like, changing my major from bio to chemical engineering was not really, like, a scary thing to do at the time. Yeah.
How did you get involved with the school activity?
So it was actually funny because one day I had missed a bus going home, and so I had to wait for my parents to come pick me up. And so I was just walking down the science hall, and I heard, like, a bunch of people, like, in a room just, like, making noise. And so, like, I stepped into the doorway to see what was going on, and, like, the teacher invited me in, and that's really how I joined the science club.
Cool. What activities do you think were missing in your high school?
I would say, like, maybe teaching about, like, their options going into college.
Okay.
Because I learned, like, you could, like, waive some of your application fees, like, certain things like that, like, going into college. But after that, like, I didn't really get much on, like, what college is really going to be like, what, like, your options at financing are, like, what happens if you don't do well yourself, like, is that the world, like, being over, like, they didn't really talk about that. And so, like, I feel like maybe, like, a college prep, that would have been good. But
Okay. What barriers prevented you from accessing mathematics opportunities in your high school?
I guess information really, but other than that, I wouldn't say I was like barred from certain opportunities. It's just like there was also like a math club at my school, but like in high school, I wasn't really interested like in math. Like math wasn't really the class. I would say like yes, if you put me in my math class, I'm getting an A. Like I would probably say like my bios class or like my history class.
Okay. Tell me about the mathematics opportunities that helped you in your mathematics identity.
So this is really funny because it was actually the class that I almost failed in high school. It was pre-calculus. At this time, like, I just didn't understand. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around, like, a lot of the concepts that were being presented. And so, like, I was just there. Like, I'm paying attention. And, like, I would start falling asleep because I just don't understand. Like, I can't follow what's going on the board. And, like, it wasn't like I was one of those students who would, like, always stop after class and go to the teacher. Because I was that kid, like, who didn't want to be late to their next class. And so, like, after the bell rang and I'm dismissed, like, I'm going. And so, like, after failing, like, my first two tests in that class, my teacher at the time, Mr. Schultz, pulled me aside and was like, hey, what's going on? Like, your previous math teacher said, like, you didn't do this in his class. And so, like, what's going on here? Like, talk to me about it. And I was just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And, like, it was just, like, a matter of repetition. Like, trying to just look at it constantly. Like, looking at it from different angles. Because after that, like, I started doing a lot better in his classes. Like, passed my third exam, the fourth exam, and the final. And I was able to pull out the grade and move on to the next class.
So what opportunities helped you define your mathematics identity?
So one was the mentorship from my professor, my teacher at the time. Like, him giving me, like, the time during my lunchtime in my study hall to come in and, like, ask questions, give, like, whatever I needed, like, give whatever questions I had and see if he could, like, present the ideas in a different way. There was also, like, a student who was really good at the class, so, like, he would also sometimes help me. So I guess that was kind of like tutoring too. Mm-hmm. And so those opportunities really helped me, like, give me the view I have on math today. Because after those classes, like, coming into college and taking pre-calculus again, like, it was like understanding the concepts and then just keeping on building using the same tools that I had learned from high school. It was very, very helpful.
How do you perceive your mathematics identity?
What do you mean by that?
So you talked to me about the opportunities that helped in your mathematics identity, which was your pre-calculus class, and also the opportunities that helped you define your mathematics identity was that mentorship and constant help from your teacher, right? Always pulling you aside. But I want to know how you perceive that mathematics identity.
Well, I would say, like, it's still under development because I feel I have a lot more. Like, there's discrete math, there's all these other math topics that, like, are above me. I have no idea how I would solve any of those equations. And so I would say, like, it is still in development because I have a feeling I'm going to need some of them going forward in my career.
Mm-hmm. Describe a high point in your schooling. Let's say a time when you were most engaged or alive in your mathematics education. And this could be a high points in high school, a high points in college, but just that time when you were most engaged and most alive.
This would be differential equations. It was one of my favorite classes in college. I went into the class not understanding what dx was. Like, I had no idea what a differential was. Like, I had no idea what I was jumping into. And so, like, being able to go to class, take notes, have, like, really well laid out examples, teacher who was constantly engaging with the class. Like, if he would put an example on the board, he would call somebody up and have them give, like, the answer. If they didn't know it, like, we would walk through it with them. And it wasn't, like, in a condescending tone or, like, a hostile environment or anything like that. It was really, like, an environment really conducive to learning. And so, like, it was really easy, like, to stay engaged, stay focused, and, like, quite a few of the people in that class got A's. And so I would say that was probably, like, a high point.
Was it the teaching style, or was it the people in the class? Like, what was it?
So it was definitely the teaching style, and the people in the class helped. As, like, we were most of us were all juniors and people, like, getting into their majors, and so we needed this, like, specific class to understand what we were learning the next semester. And so it was, like, a combination of his teaching style and, like, the engagement in class that really helped, because differential equations, like, applying it in my engineering class felt like a whole different topic. Like, even though we were basically doing the same things, just with, like, different variables, it just felt like a whole different topic. Like, it felt a little bit harder, even though it wasn't, like, looking back on it.
And differential. So not everybody in the class was an engineer, because this was in the math department.
No.
Okay. What helpful and or positive experiences did you have in mathematics education growing up?
So I've always, like, growing up African, it was always, like, STEM, right? And so, like, my parents would always have me, like, doing math books and just constant reading. It was, my homework would always, like, be checked, make sure everything was correct, things like that. And so, like, just these fundamental skills, like, starting at a really young age, helped me, I guess, build, like, a familiarity with math. And so, like, the elementary school, middle school, high school, until I reached that roadblock, really, like, those were really helpful, like, in my development.
Describe successful experiences that you've had in your mathematics education.
I think I'm gonna keep referring back to this differential equations class because that I think like that was one of the highest points.
Okay.
Like where I was like, dang, I really like math. Like I even considered like getting a math minor from the math department, but a bunch of complications came up, and so in the end, I decided against it.
Okay. Was differential equations your last mathematics course in college? Yeah. Okay. So, as a Black student, how do you approach college mathematics education?
So I really would reach out to the professor first if like I'm having trouble to see if there's like any tutoring services offered this class. And usually like with the math department, they had something like that, especially like for Calc 1, Calc 2. And if that's not offered, then I usually ask for office hours to try and go in. And I refer to some of my peers who are like doing a little bit better than me in the class, like how they're going about studying for these tips, like what tricks that they have that helps them remember what to do and things like that.
So as a Black male, not just as a Black student, but as a Black male, describe how you approach college mathematics education.
I would say I have the same approach. Being a male, now if I was a female, I'd probably have a different approach, and so I can't really speak on it as I'm not female. And so I would say like I'd have the same approach.
Okay. Describe how your previous mathematics experiences helped you adjust to your current mathematics education.
So I would say like figuring out that you can get help from like your teachers and the students around you, really, especially like coming into college. Like I utilize office hours during my pre-calculus class and my Calc 1 class, and so I would say like those were some of the things that influenced that.
Describe the helpful and or positive experiences that you've had as a Black student enrolled in college mathematics.
You already know what I'm going to say, but like I said, I've been blessed with really great professors, and the creme of the crop is my differential equations professor, and so those were. If I could take that class like every single day, I'd probably choose that class instead of like all my other college courses.
Right. Let's talk about that class for a little bit. And this is when you were a little bit. This was when you were a junior, so you're third year in college. And you were in differential equations in the math department as an engineering student. How many Black students were in this class?
It was about 3.
Okay. Did you know all of the Black students?
I only knew one.
Okay. help me understand like the dynamics of the class.
So being a student at OU, you kind of get used to being like the only black person in your class. Sometimes, like in the engineering, like in my graduating class in the engineering department, I believe there was only 4 of us in the class, and so like you get used to having certain classes where you're basically like the only black face in that room, and so you kind of adjust to it, and so like it doesn't really change like the dynamic being in the math class, especially like my 3rd year in, because like I kind of got used to taking first year, 2nd year, and being like the only black person in that, and so like seeing other faces was really helpful, but didn't really change much.
And then with this differential equation class, what made it so unique from other classes that other classes that you took in the math department through your math education there?
So it felt like it came easy to me. Like the other classes, like I would have to like put in really, really long hours like to understand and get it to where I needed it to be to get that A in the class. Whereas differential equations, it felt like I was like a toddler who is like transitioning into walking. Like it felt really natural. Like and the professor really facilitated in that, like giving the examples, because I guess it's like the way that I learned, like my learning style and his teaching style, it just really matched up. That really just made it a lot easier.
Okay. I know you talked a little bit about like the arrangement of the classroom where participation is like a big part of the classroom lecture. Was it the only math class that you had that experience where it was hands-on?
So my pre-calculus class did have that, but it was freshman, and so we weren't really jumping at the opportunity to participate. And even when we were called, people were really reluctant, like to speak out, and we're scared to be wrong. Whereas like we're juniors, I mean we're scared to be wrong, but we're like a lot more confident in ourselves. And so even if we are wrong, like it may be like maybe a step or 2 that's off, because like the examples provided in class were really simple ones, and then we'd get harder and harder as the week went on. And like once you've been called up to do an easier one, like you had the practice, even if you don't go home and practice it, like you've had the practice in class, and so like the next day, like you're more likely to understand what to do next in that class.
Tell me what it means to you to be a STEM major.
Our friends and I in college had a joke to be a STEM major is to suffer. It's true to an extent. Like being a STEM major is hard, but definitely it requires a lot of work, and so do other majors. And so that's not to take anything away from other majors, but like it requires a lot of work. You have to stay focused. Like you may get distracted here and there, but in the end, like you have to bring yourself back on track and make sure you're doing what you need to, like in order to move on. Because if you don't, you're gonna spend time going in circles and making no progress.
But what does it mean to you?
To me, it means like you have to be a hard worker. Like you have to be oriented. You have to be resourceful. Like if you don't really like working hard, you have to be resourceful. And so, like, finding the best way for you to learn the subject matter material. Finding the best way to get, like, the resources you need in order to pass the class. Things like that. So that's really what it means, like, to me to be a STEM major.
Tell me about your experiences as a Black STEM major in a predominantly white institution.
So being a Black STEM major at a PWI definitely came with some challenges. As like I didn't have exactly the same amount of resources as my white peers, and so at times it was challenging. Like, I didn't have the same amount of information at times, and so it was definitely challenging. And groups like NESB and all those, like, are really helpful, and AICHE, like, just getting involved in those same organizations that my peers are involved in really, really helped, because I basically bridged the gap in information. Maybe not as well, but I definitely gave myself like a bigger advantage than I would have if I didn't do those things.
Okay. Describe some mathematical skills that you lacked when you entered college.
Differentiation. The list goes like on and on and on, because I learned like a lot of skills from my engineering classes too, and so like I had like a solid foundation. Like, I would say up to geometry, like, I was very, very solid. But everything going from there, there are some subjects that I really understood and some subjects that I really, like, didn't have a firm grasp of. And so taking those college classes solidified, like, my understanding of a lot of those subjects. Easier to progress and understand, like, other math concepts.
So what are some of your coping strategies for your success in these college classes?
So one would be like a study group, usually. Study group really help. Studying by yourself sometimes it helps, but the old adage, 2 heads are better than one.
Right.
They definitely help, especially like if you have other focused people in those groups, because it's not easy. Like, sometimes, like, you'll have spent hours at the library. It's like 2 a.m. You have a 7 a.m. and go to that class. Now you don't want to go study. Like, you know you have to. But, like, having those classmates who are like, hey, let's just go from maybe 12 to 2, and then you can have the rest of the day instead of going to sleep till 4, where, like, we're not going to get the same help from these professors, like, as quickly as we need. And so, like, definitely having study groups and people like that assisted, like, in success. And not to forget, like, the professors and their study hours, because those also helped. Like, especially in my organic chemistry classes. Like, yeah, those hours in the offices definitely paid off.
What are some of your coping strategies for your success?
So I would say not procrastinating. I had a really big problem with procrastinating where, like, I would get an assignment today, it's due next week, and I'd be like, okay, I'm not even going to look at it until maybe like three days before the assignment is due. And like now I look at it, I have like 6 different things that I need to do, and it's going to take all 3 days. And so now, like, I'm rushing, sitting up at like 4 a.m. trying to get this done before my 8 a.m. class. And so that was definitely one thing that I implemented. Not procrastinating, like getting things, like even if I get an assignment today, like if I'm not going to work on it, I'll look at it, get the gist of it. Maybe like I'll get bored like later in the day, pick it up, something, like instead of waiting until like so close to the deadline where I'd have to do so much so quickly.
Tell me about your mathematics transition from high school all the way to college.
I'd say I had a pretty easy transition. My first college math class, I did very well in. The people I had in my little study group, like we all did very well. And so my transition wasn't really like a tough one per se. I'd say I had a pretty good transition.
Okay. What went well and what was challenging?
Challenging part was understanding what was going on in the class at the time. It's really easy, like, to just look up on the board, write whatever is written on the board, just follow the steps, just write it down. But some of the steps are skipped because it's assumed that you already know it, right? And so, like, putting that information that is assumed you know at right there, doing that in class while like you really don't have the idea, like you have to really pull on like your knowledge from what you know before. And sometimes like in class it's wrong because you have like you're basically assuming like, and this is what it is because it just so happens to make sense. Like it just so happens, like you know how you solve a problem and you just so happen to stumble on the answer, but what you did was completely correct. Like it was kind of like that, but in real time. And so, like that was really one of the tough parts of it.
How useful were the mathematical skills that you learned throughout your mathematics education?
So useful. Whether it was my electrical engineering classes, whether it was my chemical engineering classes, even in my biology classes, like these skills were used every exam. And so like they were very instrumental in my development in college, I would say.
Okay. Can you talk about the people outside of your school experiences who contributed to your mathematics identity or to your mathematics success?
So one of the people I can definitely call on is my cousin. He wasn't really like a cousin, he's like a church friend, but I still call him my cousin because he just feels like family. But he was really like motivational and helpful. Like whenever I had a problem, like he was always resourceful. Like he would try and find me someone who could help me if he couldn't help me. And then he would always like contact my parents. My parents would always try and get me like the help that I needed. And so like those three people were really, really helpful, like outside of school and getting the help that I needed.
Okay. The three people are mom, dad, and your cousin?
Yep.
Okay. I am just curious about your experiences outside of school that contributed to your mathematics identity or to your mathematics success.
So outside of school, there wasn't really much. Maybe like a job here and there, adding to like my arithmetic skills, but nothing really per se.
All right. You did mention something about outside of school you would work, that you might use some arithmetic. Can you give an example or talk about one job that you felt like you used some arithmetic or some mathematics at the job site?
Yeah, so I worked with Reebok for a few months, and like working with them, I would constantly using discount codes, and so definitely percentages, and then I would also have like dollar amounts, subtracting, adding, helping people order, adding taxes to orders to let people know like, hey, this is what it'll come out to be after like everything is done. And so like that is really cool that I can bring forth. That.
Can you help me understand the ways you perceive your academic success as a high achieving Black student?
Could you repeat that?
So I want you to help me understand the ways that you perceive your academic success as a high achieving Black college student.
I would say there's more. This isn't the end of the road, because there's definitely more that I feel I need to accomplish, I need to do, I need to learn, and so I would say job half done. That's really how I perceive it.
Okay. Tell me what you perceive your academic barriers as a high achieving Black student.
So this is very common, but I would say funds. Funding your academic progress. That's definitely one of the barriers. Also, health. Health is very, very important, and some of us aren't blessed with that same amount of good health. And so those are really like the two major things that I would say are barriers for me.
Okay. Tell me about how what you perceive to be your academic. Well, you talked about your academic success. You also talked about your academic barriers. So, as a high achieving student, what helpful and or positive experiences did you have in college?
I had a lot of positive experiences from one of my professors who I thought was like one of the meanest people on earth, turning out to be the professor I literally always email for help. Like, I met some of my really close friends in college, made some really lifelong, really, really strong friendships in college. And so, like, these were all bonuses on top of earning my degree. And so I'm really glad for the opportunity and the chance to go through those 5 years of college.
Okay. Let's talk about the professor who you used to think weren't on your corner, but now is on your corner. Tell me more about that.
So he wasn't like a professor who would speak to you like if you didn't ask, really. Like, it was like, here's how it is. If you need help, contact me. He didn't look like a super outgoing person. Like, his voice, he had a really deep voice. And so, like, that also added to, like, the intimidating factor. If you did something wrong, he would call you out. And that's that on that. You didn't have any words or excuses. You just had to get it done and do it right. And so, being a freshman, sophomore, seeing that, it was, like, kind of intimidating because, like, you were used to, like, your high school teachers being like, okay, here's another chance to do this. Here's another chance to do this. Okay, now what's going on? Like, you were kind of babied in high school, whereas, like, in college, he didn't have that. And so, like, that transition, like, just coming in and, like, hitting that was really, like, oh, okay. It was kind of intimidating. And so, like, I kind of tried to avoid him. Like, if his name was, like, on the course offerings, I picked the other teacher. Like, tried not to take his class, and like eventually I had to because he was the he wasn't the dean. I forget the title position for it, but he was really high up in the College of Chemical Engineering, and so like he taught quite a few of the classes. Like he taught me every single semester up until I graduated.
Oh, nice.
And, yeah. Getting into his classes, getting to see like his interactions and how like he actually helps you get where you need to be, like get the information you need instead of like babying you along the way. Like that kind of motivated me to speak to him, get closer, like figure out plan of attack, especially like when complications came up, and he was really like helpful in developing plans like for me to keep moving forward in my education. And so forever grateful.
Okay. And you were able to build this rapport throughout the classes that you kept taking with him, right? This rapport probably wouldn't have been created if it was just that one class.
Correct.
Okay. So this professor is not black.
No.
How many black professors were in your department?
In my chemical engineering?
Yes.
I would say one, but he's not black. He's a person of color.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So if would you say, because I'm curious to know that you build this rapport and this person is very significant in your college education, but you had to build that rapport, right, to have that. So what kind of advice would you give to an incoming first-year black college student in STEM education?
Definitely do not be intimidated by any professor. I mean, like, no matter how mean they seem at the time, like, just do what you're supposed to do. Like, if you have issues, like, just talk to them about it. Like, most professors are there to help you succeed. And if they're not, like, you have, like, tools in your corner as a student to help you do what you need to do for you to succeed, regardless of what that professor does, because they can't give you a bad grade even though you did well on this exam. Like, they can't stop your educational progress because they don't like you. Like, don't be scared to speak to any professors about anything. Like, if they don't like it, then that's fine. Like, you just go and get, like, there are resources out in the college. Maybe not in the specific department that you're in. Baker, like the other professors in your college, there are other professors in other colleges who help me, give me advice on where to go. And so, like, you just, like, we're all people. Like, at the end of the day, like, we're all trying to make something of ourselves. We all have an end goal. And so just speak to someone. If they don't want to help you, speak to another person. Somebody somewhere is willing to help you.
Okay. What would be your number one advice for this lost black male, female student now trying to start their STEM education?
Definitely utilize office hours. Office hours are your friend. Because even if you're not doing well in the class and you're showing up to the office hours showing, like, hey, there's progress here. Like, I'm really making the effort to do well in this class. It's just, like, it's not something that I'm understanding now. Right? Like, maybe they'll provide you with somebody else, like another person who can teach it in a way that you understand it. Maybe they can show you, like, another tool that they don't really use because this is, like, the way that they've been doing it for a while and, like, it seems to work. Maybe, like, they can help you. Like, you might need that C to pass this class and you're at the C minus, and them seeing that effort and you going in constantly, like, getting the help that you need. Unfortunately, you're 0.5 away from that C. They're much more likely to consider giving you that C instead of that C minus and help you go along in your college career. So definitely, like, your professors are your resource. I recommend using them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for giving me the time today to listen to your experiences and your barriers that you've had as you've transitioned from college to, as you've transitioned from high school to college.
Of course. And thank you for taking your time to give this interview.
Yes, thank you.